It's already costing big bucks, and it's going to get more expensive by the day.
That's right. The Navy is scrapping the former USS Enterprise, the Big E, and the price tag to date has been astronomical.
Mike Gooding reports, hang on to your wallets. A new government watchdog agency says it's about to get much worse.
The new aircraft carrier Enterprise.
The USS Enterprise was hailed as one of the new wonders of the world when it first came along in 1961. But now in the 21st century, the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is becoming something of a financial burden on the Navy and taxpayers, while the government evaluates dismantlement and disposal alternatives for the decommissioned warship. At least $863 million has been spent on the Big E so far, and the Government Accountability Office reports it may take more than $1.5 billion to finish the job. The GAO lays out two options. If the work were done at a government-owned naval shipyard, it would take 10 years starting in 2034 and cost $1.05 to $1.55 billion. And if the work were done at a private commercial facility, it would take 5 years starting in 2024 and would cost $750 million to $1.4 billion. Whatever happens with the Enterprise, the GAO states that it will set precedents for the processes, costs, and oversight that may be used to dismantle and dispose of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers in the future, such as the Nimitz-class carriers, which the Navy will begin to retire in the mid-2020s. House Armed Services Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee Chairman Rob Whitman of Virginia's 1st District is weighing in. In a statement to 13 News Now, he calls the costs so far horribly expensive and a waste of taxpayer dollars. Whitman goes on to say the Navy should dispose the ex-Enterprise based on the most operationally efficient and least cost alternative. Mike Gooding, 13 News Now.